Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is episode 26 of High Street Sports. My name is Chris. This is Vince. This is the Buckeye Show. Ohio State, a winner on Saturday against Michigan State, 38-3, in a gray out of the shoe. I thought those uniforms looked incredible under the lights. I thought the environment in the shoe was a pretty damn good one. But it was a sellout crowd, pretty raucous to start, but as blowout games go, towards the second half, that environment did kind of drop off a little bit, but that's to be expected. Vince, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Not a whole lot. Big game last week. I think that was probably the most complete performance we've seen from the Buckeyes so far this season. Prayers up to Lathan Ransom, who was announced this week, who's not going to be back for the regular season. I think we all probably figured that one out when he was on a little scooting. He was scooting around like JT Barrett back in 2016. Not 2016, 2014.
Right.
But, I think we understood that. Stinks, but hopefully he'll be back for the playoff. And we can turn this into a natty. We'll see how it goes from here, but I thought Michigan State, really good game. I think Kyle McCord probably had his best game as far as ball placement and accuracy goes.
Mm-hmm.
Man, was he on. He made a lot of good throws, in stride, had 335 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. Really, really good performance by him. Trey, another decent game, 13 carries, 63 yards, touchdown for him as well. So, really good. Oh, and is Marvin Harrison Jr. any good?
Word on the street is yes, and
Okay.
I think yeah, that is pretty easy to say. And I think that Kyle McCord and Marvin Harrison Jr. combination, to me, is probably the best combination quarterback to receiver in college football. You can make a case for Jaden Daniels and Malik Neighbors at LSU, and a few others, but I think
Keon
that connection
Coleman, Jordan
between
Travis.
yeah. I mean, there's a bunch out there, but when it's comfortable and when Kyle McCord can stand back there and do what he does, you see a pretty accurate passer when the pocket's clean. And I think one thing about this game too is you really saw Kyle was able to stand back there and get to his second and third read a bunch. And I'll give credit where credit's due. The offensive line kept him pretty clean. Obviously we're talking about a game against Michigan State and, the season that they're having and kind of the way that program direction they're pointed in. But all things considered, Kyle McCord did have a pretty clean day in the pocket, and was able to stand back there and really get his feet in sync, and stand back there and make some confident throws. So I do believe that Marvin Harrison Jr. kid is pretty good. I think that's a guy that should very well be a Heisman finalist at the very least. It is a quarterback award, and it's hard for receivers to go out there and win that award. But I think he should absolutely be in New York at the end of the year with that Heisman Trophy presentation. So another really good day for Marvin Harrison Jr., who that first touchdown that he caught, I thought was one of Kyle McCord's best balls that he's thrown all season. And that is definitely going to have to be something that the Buckeyes are going to need, especially moving in these next couple weeks. So big time game for Kyle McCord and a big time game for Marvin Harrison Jr. as well.
Yeah, I think that Ryan Day is really starting to feel himself when it comes to the play calling. He seems to have figured out that counter and different gap schemes with orbit motion is really, really helping defense or helping the run game get going. Looking through the grades for the offensive line, by far, this was one of their better rush blocking games.
Mm-hmm.
And just watching them on TV, I thought they did a really good job. And even in pass pro, all really good. So it's going to be, of course, you're playing what most would say a hapless team, and I would probably agree. I mean, when you're Mel Tuggerless, it really takes a toll on you. You can't do that. You just got to let
Atta
it go,
baby.
man.
I couldn't. I couldn't. That was a good one. I'll give you that one. That was a good one.
Now I lost my train of thought there.
I don't know, something about
Sorry,
tugging.
America. I talk about a fine head coach and someone takes it there. So I don't think Brenda Tracy appreciates that either.
No, well, she'll be fine.
Yeah, that's fair. No, so I think that Marvin Harrison, his first touchdown, electric. That 19-yard rush, just it was exactly what I was talking about there with the scheme. It's one of the wrinkles off of it. We saw, and I think that this is an interesting thought here. All my thoughts are interesting though, but I think that the scheme is really starting to show itself this season. You watched against Wisconsin; they had a lot of that orbit motion, but we're running straight ahead, inside zone, a little bit of inside gap scheme, power, and some counter on it. But now you're seeing more handoffs, more RPOs off of it, and really kind of develop those wrinkles in. And I think that this is kind of what is helping the offense along right now. I remember a couple of years ago, Wisconsin tried to do this and motion us to death because we were playing so much man. I want to say that was 2019. And it kind of seems like Ryan Day's taken a cue out of that playbook to just say, okay, we'll motion you to death. Come try to play man against us, and get guys into zone. So I'm really excited to see what these next 2 weeks are going to entail for the Buckeyes. We've got first up the boat rowers, and then we have the cheaters. So gonna be interesting. I don't think that the boat rowers are going to get very far up the Olentangy, but we'll see on Saturday.
Yeah, and I made a mistake too. Just going back to what I was talking about, Marvin Harrison's touchdown catch. You were right. That first touchdown was that little end around, and then the second touchdown that Marv had was the dot from Kyle McCord on the sideline in the end zone. So, but yeah, so I agree with your thought about the run game and how that's developing, and it seems like Ohio State is finding ways to better run the ball as the offensive line seems to kind of start to feel itself a little bit coming down the stretch here. And I think one thing that's interesting, and I love Xavier Johnson, and I think he's a phenomenal athlete. He's a great player. But the point has been made, throughout the week that, if Emeka Egbuka is, still trying to kind of, get healthy and get back to 100% and knock the rust off for missing those 2 games, why not put him in some of those situations where, if you're having trouble, if you're Kyle McCord having trouble getting the ball to Emeka, with the connection to Marv being what it is, why would you not try to get Emeka the ball in those situations and kind of figure out easier ways like that to get Emeka involved, being the athlete that he is? And, that might be something that is in the cards and that we just haven't seen yet. But, Xavier Johnson does well in those roles, and he's a guy that makes plays, and why not use him if you're Ohio State? So there's an idea there, but obviously, they know what they're doing. So they're in the positions they're in, and we'll go from there. But, another huge addition back into the offense is a healthy Cade Stover. And I think, he is every bit of a difference maker as, maybe an Emeka Egbuka and a Travion Henderson as far as the playmaking goes. Not quite on the same level as Marv, obviously, because, Marv is best player in the country. But Cade Stover is a massive piece to the Ohio State offense. And I think it's pretty clear that when he is in the game and a viable threat to catch the ball, that takes a certain, it takes a certain level of attention for the defense to make sure that he is covered. And, that to me, Cade Stover is going to be one of the more important pieces down the stretch, as he was in the Georgia game before he got hurt. And, as he has been all year before he, has dealt with some injury this year. So the Buckeyes offense, and you mentioned TreVeyon Henderson earlier, and I just mentioned TreVeyon, and it was kind of an average game from TreVeyon as far as his numbers go. 7 rushes for 35 yards, or excuse me, that was Chip Trainum. 13 rushes for 63 yards and a touchdown for TreVeyon Henderson. So, not as good as the last couple weeks have been for TreVeyon, but his impact, and you can just see from the way he's running the ball right now that he feels good, and he's ready to go down the stretch here. And Ohio State's going to need that aspect in his playmaking ability down the stretch. So Ohio State's offense is getting healthy, and the pieces that Ohio State's going to need to get to where they want to go are in the lineup, and they're starting to play well. So but one thing that I do want to point out is you've got to have, if Emeka's not going to be there and is not going to be healthy and it's not going to be himself, you got to have more out of Julian Fleming. You got to have more out of Carnell Tate, and you got to have more out of potentially, Xavier Johnson catching the ball. So there are some issues that I think Ohio State needs to work out. But all in all, that doesn't overshadow the dominant performance that they had. And the guys on the pod talked about it earlier this week too. This could have very well been a game where Ohio State put up a crooked number, and that 50 piece or 60 piece really could have been there, but mercilessly Ryan Day decided to take his foot off the gas when Emeka Egbuka came up limp in the second half. So it's kind of one of those, it's not really necessary. Now, that may have reflected in the Buckeyes getting jumped in the polls in the college football playoff this week. But, whatever, win and everything takes care of itself. So I'm not going to put too much stock into that. But all in all, I thought the offense had a pretty good performance across the board. And the only thing that I think I can point out is the secondary playmaking in the receiver room that needs to step up. But other than that, I thought the offense had a pretty damn good day for when the starters were out there for the first half and first, I don't know, 5 or 6 minutes of the third quarter.
Yeah, and I really I echo what you said about Cade Stover. He was 7 targets, 7 receptions for 79 yards, had a touchdown. He's Mr. Reliable. He catches on this season. He's caught 85% of the balls thrown his way. With his game with the most targets and least receptions. So the essentially he missed 3 balls against Notre Dame. He missed 1 ball against Maryland and 2 against Indiana, and that is all of the targets that he's not caught.
Yeah.
And so he's Mr. Reliable. He's your safety guy. Kind of reminds me of KJ Hill from 2016 to 2019, really towards the end of his career, probably in 2018, was a career 75% guy when it came to targets versus receptions, and just caught a lot of balls in the clutch. And
massive
I know that
touchdown in Happy Valley. Oh,
yeah, and I know that Cade and KJ play obviously different positions, but KJ Hill was a slot wide receiver where Cade Stover's a big old tight end, Farmer Grunk. So it's one of those things where you really want to see him get a lot more touches in key moments because he's going to convert. And then along the lines of Carnell Tate, I do agree. I would love to see more from him. He only had 2 targets for 2 receptions on the day. So caught all the balls going his way. But I still don't think that he is what I thought he would be at this point. I really want to see more out of him. He's catching about 69% of the balls that thrown his way. I'd like to see something closer to probably 72-73%. And additionally, he's catching fairly his yards per reception is 15.9. So he's catching longer balls, converting first downs, but if you're not getting the volume, I think that you need to show that you're going to be more of a reliable target. And I really think that might be why Julian Fleming's getting a lot more playing time than him, and why we haven't seen him targeted as much, even with Emeka out over the two previous games that Emeka was out, Wisconsin and Rutgers. He only had 2 targets each of those games as well. So I'm sure that there's other factors involved, probably his route running, probably his blocking, and he may just not be to the level we think he is yet. Not everybody could be Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson, but I think he'll get there. Or maybe they're saving him for the rivalry game at the end of the season and really going to dice him up like we did with Chris Olave his freshman year.
Yeah, so 2 points. First, about Cade Stover before we move on. I think, as far as his impact on the offense goes, when you have a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr., who has had some uncharacteristic drops, but all in all is otherworldly. If you talk about his impact on the offense and you talk about the tight ends across the country, it is absolutely, in my opinion, not far-fetched to say that he has every bit of an impact on Ohio State's offense as Brock Bowers does on Georgia's offense. And if you get a game, if you could pull up let me know what his run blocking grade was from this past week. I think it probably was his highest of the season, if I had to guess. Cade Stover, in totality, had a very good game last weekend, and that type of impact that he has is an incredible impact, especially on an offense like this where you don't really have some of the secondary production from the receivers. So, in my opinion, Cade Stover should be in the conversation for the top tight end in the country, just based on the impact that he's had. Do you have that run block grade? Am I wrong?
His run block grade on the year?
No. Just from this past weekend. What did he grade out this past weekend?
Give me a moment.
And
I was
then
looking at something else.
my second point here about Carnell Tate is, I think, and you brought up exactly what I was going to say. I think if you look at the trajectory of his season, right? He's flashed multiple times throughout the year. He's, had some pretty big plays. He's also dropped some balls, as you mentioned too. And you're right. Not everybody can be Chris Olave. Not everybody can be Garrett Wilson off the jump. But I do have faith in Carnell to be that Chris Olave type impact down the stretch. And I think, if I remember correctly, Olave didn't have much of an impact, if any, in the first half of his freshman season, and showed up in that Michigan game with humongous touchdowns. So, I really do think that Carnell Tate could have that type of impact in the game. And, I'm not worried about it, but I definitely think it is, something to consider for Ohio State's offense down the stretch here, is that secondary production from the receiver room. So, I agree with your point about Carnell. And I wanted to make that point about Cade Stover because I do feel like he's not getting nearly the credit he deserves for how good he's been this year when he's been in the game.
Yeah. His run block grade, not good.
Not great.
46.9 for Michigan State, 57.4 overall on the season. Now,
so
I
he was
I didn't see anything egregious with his blocking.
I think that's more what I was getting at is he didn't make any mistakes that jumped off the screen at you when you were watching the game.
Yeah, and I've also noticed that these PFF ratings for blocking have been a little wonky. I don't know if you noticed, but I kind of stopped using them as the numbers a couple of weeks ago because the numbers don't seem right as far as like totals, but
Yeah.
I think it gives a good general ballpark of who was good or performing better than others.
Right. It's PFF is by no
In the
means the
game.
gospel. Yeah, PFF
No,
is by
no,
no
no.
means the gospel. However, like you mentioned, it's a tool
Yeah.
to use to kind of compare and contrast. But I do think that in totality, that was probably Cade Stover's most impactful game of the year, in my
Mhm.
opinion. No glaring mistakes when Ohio State needed him to make a big block or whatever the case was. So yeah, I would like to give Cade his flowers because quite honestly, I think he is, he might not be on the same level as Brock Bowers in the eyes of a lot of the big name pundits. But I do think that he has every bit of an impact as Brock Bowers does on Georgia's offense, as Cade does on Ohio State's offense. So, in my opinion, Farmer Gronk, one of the best in the country, if not the best at what he does. And, who doesn't love a guy who just wants to go out there and ram somebody's face into the turf?
And get tractor sponsorships.
Yeah,
Let's be honest here,
he's got
because
a he's got General Bob's shankability too.
probably. I
Oh yeah,
mean,
definitely.
he grew up on a cattle farm, so we'll just leave it there.
Mhm,
Um, on a side note, did you see
mhm.
Jelani Thurman in the
I
second
did.
half? I know I mentioned earlier in our pre-show chat here that I really didn't watch the second half, but there was only one guy that really stood out to me, and that's because he just looked like a freak on the field, and that
Mhm,
was Jelani Thurman.
mhm.
His run block grade was the highest on the team. No, he only had 11 or sorry, 13 total snaps, 11 blocking snaps, 10 of which were run blocks. But hey, man, get you some. And he
Yeah,
had, I believe he had 2 catches for 18 yards. And did a pretty good job. I'm excited to see how he grows within this offense as well. I don't think that I think Michigan State was the first game we saw him, so he's probably headed for a red shirt.
mhm.
But because he is a true freshman, right?
He is, and
Yeah.
even with that red shirt, and if this is the first game that he's appeared in, Ohio State has done a pretty good job with
Mhm.
managing his playing time. So if they feel he's ready, and like you mentioned, he is a physical freak. I mean, the dude
Mhm.
just looks different when he's standing out there. He does not look like he's out of place. He looks like he belongs for sure. Um, but that clears the way for him to if Ohio State needed him for whatever the reason, he's got 3 games to play with now, coming down the stretch here. So he could be even a special teams type of go down there and make a
Mhm.
tackle or something like that. But yeah, it was good to see him get some playing time and good to see him on the field after all the hype that he had in the offseason.
Yeah, he kind of reminds me a little bit of a smaller a smaller Darnell Washington.
Okay.
Um, Darnell's 6'7", 270. Jelani is 6'6", 260. And why I say smaller because Darnell Washington is an absolutely massive
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
But I don't think he has that. I don't think that he's up to that. He hasn't been in mixed dojo too long yet.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll see that Josh Perry transformation. Um, maybe we will. Maybe we won't. But
Yeah.
he looks like a freak and seems to like to play. I'm excited to see how that goes. And then, like you said, they've done a really good job managing playing time for some of these dudes.
Hmm.
And technically, he could play actually the rest of the games
Hmm.
because the rest of I mean, with and still keep his red shirt intact, right? Because you can only play 4 games. If he
Right.
were to play, and the only way he would end up losing that red shirt would be if he plays in a potential national championship. But
Correct.
oh no. He wouldn't be eligible for the bowl game. I forgot about the Big Ten championship.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, Ohio State's got
Yeah.
a ways to make it before we get to that conversation. However,
Mhm.
um,
Just
The
spitballing
only
here, you know?
the only 2 true freshmen that caught passes, in this game were Carnell Tate and Jaylani Thurman. So I think that, that says a lot about what the coaching staff thinks about those 2. I'm pretty sure Carnell Tate has burned his red shirt.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but
Yeah,
a guy
he's
that has
no red
not
shirt.
is Brandon Ennis, and he's still got, some games to play with. So it'll be interesting to see if we see, any more Brandon Ennis, whether it be this weekend or beyond. So, but yeah, I think Ohio State's done a really good job of preserving the freshman playing time and those red shirts, and it says a lot too about those guys that they're willing to come in and sit behind the talent that we have and maturate themselves and get
Mhm.
themselves ready to go and learn from what's out there right now, because this is some of the, I mean, year in and year out, there's good talent all across the board at Ohio State, and the starters and freshmen behind them. So, yeah, it says a lot about those guys and the coaching staff, and for their ability to manage that the right way.
Yeah, and just one correction, he has burned his red shirt.
Who's that?
Brandon Ennis. He's played in every game so far on special teams.
Okay. Well,
Yep, he's got snaps in every game. Rutgers was the most, and those were mostly on kick return. Interestingly,
well. Anyways, that kind of sucks. But special teams. I mean, it's all hands on deck for special teams, and that's a conversation that we could spend an hour and a half on, especially the coverage portion of special teams. And I
is
will.
this Jaden Ballard experiment coming to a head here? I feel like he's just not cutting it right now.
I don't think it's a
As
Jaden
far as
Ballard
that,
thing. I think
no.
it's more so. No, I don't, because it was more of the same with Emeka,
Mhm.
and it's really been more of the, I mean, I don't would correct me if I'm wrong, um, and I'm blanking on his name right now. Jalen Marshall was the last
Mhm.
one to have a kick return for a touchdown, right? Punt return for a
That would have
touchdown.
been a punt return against Indiana, yes.
So
And that would have been 2015, I think.
it's been since then that Ohio State has really just looked inept returning punts at all. And it's, it's a shame, because the talent that we have to put back there, it shouldn't be that way. Um, I don't really know where to point the finger in that case, but the fact that Ohio State hasn't had, and I can't remember the last kick return that we've had for a touchdown either.
It was in
Um,
2010.
Kick return?
And yeah, kick return was in 2010. Punt return was in 2014.
Yeah, see, that's, I mean, and granted, it doesn't happen every week everywhere. So I would like to preface that I don't think
Mhm.
it's just an Ohio State thing, but other teams look much more comfortable doing it than we do. And
Mhm.
that's a trend that's been there for a long time, as you mentioned. So I don't know what needs to be done. Um, I don't know how to fix it. I'm not a special teams coach. So, I will fully admit that. I don't really know exactly how to fix that, or what would be the answer, but something has to give, because it doesn't really look like anybody they put back there is it's not going to change with Emeka. It's not going to change with Marvin. It's not going to change with Travion. It's not going to change with anybody back there. So I don't know. It's a mystery that, will stand the test of time, I guess.
Yeah. Jordan Hall was the last kick return against the team up north in 2010
Mm.
in the second quarter. So, I would like to see more from Parker
Yeah, Parker
Fleming
Fleming.
on the special teams. I question why we are paying a coach just for special teams when they have not been very good for a
Yeah.
long time. And you could pay someone like James Laurinaitis, who could then help in the linebackers room more than he is, and go out recruiting and maybe land a linebacker or two for that room. However, that would still leave someone needing to take on those responsibilities, and not really sure what the background of the other coaches on the roster are. But maybe they could focus on that at some point. I don't know. I mean, there's always some way you can spin that.
Yeah.
Maybe someone like Perry Eliano. He's been a special teams coach in two places. Somebody like that, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. But we'll move on here to the defense if you're
Mhm.
cool with that. Michigan State on Saturday had 11 first downs, 182 total yards of offense. They didn't, turn the ball over. Ohio State didn't force any turnovers. Hauser was 12 of 24 passing for 92 yards, no touchdowns. So I would think, it's pretty safe to say that was a really damn good game for Ohio State's defense. A couple that long run that I think Malik Hartford kind of took a bad angle at
Mhm.
that would have turned a 9-yard play into what it was, a 27-yard run or something like that. So I mean, outside of that, there really wasn't much to complain about here. Davis and Igbinosun was the leading tackler along with Cody Simon with 5 tackles each, followed by Malik Hartford, who had 4, and Tyleek Williams, who had 4 as well. So a pretty solid game for
Mhm.
those for the Silver Bullets. Davis and Igbinosun had 2 pass deflections. Cody Simon had 1. Jordan Hancock had 1, and Jermaine Matthews had 1. So
My
there
guy.
were guys who were getting dirty and getting in the middle of plays. Again, Davis Igbinosun is a guy who has really been heating up the last couple of weeks for Ohio State, and that's really a welcome sight when you have somebody opposite of whether it be Jermaine Matthews or Denzel Burke on that other side. And I don't think you can understate the impact that Jermaine Matthews has had since he's been kind of thrown into the playing time that he's gotten. He's another guy that just looks like he belongs,
Mhm.
and he should be a really fun player to watch at Ohio State for the next 2 or 3 years. So, and another guy who is really starting to kind of who has not, I don't want to say starting to find his way. He's found his way. He's had a good season. But Sonny Styles is a guy who
Mhm.
is really starting to make some really impactful plays and make himself known. So, what are your thoughts on where this defense is at, how they played on Saturday, and the outlook going forward?
Yeah, I think Sonny Style is extremely comfortable right now in that position, where he is playing essentially Lathan Ransom's spot right now, and then they've kept Jordan Hancock in the nickel for I guess all of the snaps, which kind of aligns more with what they did last year with Tanner McAllister in that and in that slot safety corner
Mm-hmm.
defensive back, whatever, the guy that plays in the nickel. Because you know where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah,
Because
it's very much
everybody,
a
it's a safety driven defense, but
right.
we have 3 safeties that one actually plays corner. So,
Yeah, yeah.
um, and then a defensive end who kind of just stands up sometimes. I they call a Jack or a Leo or a
You
Bullet or a Viper or a Talon. I don't know. If it was Bowling Green, they'd probably call it a Talon because they're
I
the
see what you did there.
Falcons. Yeah,
Yeah, I see what you did there.
yeah.
It's big brain stuff.
didn't
But
didn't they
I
get a big win last night?
They did. They did. I liken the Jermaine Matthews, or excuse me, the Jordan Hancock experiment to like that of a Sean Wade when they had Sean Wade playing that slot corner deal there. So,
Hmm.
and to me, if you can get another Sean Wade-ish athlete playing that kind of defense, flying around the field the way Jordan Hancock does, then that's a win for Ohio State.
I feel like someone on this show has said that before, that that Jordan Hancock looks like Sean Wade in 2019. I feel like somebody said that. Not sure who it was. Maybe it was, oh, it was me. I said
Oh
it.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Probably a couple of weeks ago. He's
Mhm.
been balling, man.
Yeah.
He is really, really balling. And I'm really excited to see this come up because he's a guy that's been around the program, what, 3 years now, and was a highly touted guy that we were wondering when he was going to come on. And man, has he really found a spot there at the slot and just loves to play. He gets
Mhm.
involved in the run game. Um, and he's a really good pass defender. I don't think that I've seen a lot of what the heck was that Cameron Martinez type of moments from him,
Mhm.
which is I think really one of the big things we were looking for from this defense from the start. So I'm really happy that he is um, playing well. And I think overall this secondary is as strong as ever. Um, and you've got a lot of guys who want to go in there and hit and play. Hopefully, Josh Proctor will be back soon, so you have Sonny and Josh Proctor back there. And as much as I love Josh Proctor coming up in the box and defending in the run game, I think you're going to see him probably more playing deep safety when he comes back, just because I think that's one area where Sonny could get better is his coverage.
Yeah, and I don't hate that opinion at all. I agree with that. I think where Sonny's more comfortable is I think it's pretty clear that it's in the box, it's up closer to the line of scrimmage. So he's been making some impactful plays, and
Mhm.
I think with the um yeah, okay. I was trying to look here and see. I think that sack that Sonny had in the first half was untouched off of like a almost like a corner blitz
Mhm.
sort of look, or like an outside linebacker sort of look there. So yeah, I mean he's really comfortable up in the box and close to the line of scrimmage, and where he can put a hat on a hat and make contact and really disrupt the play. But I think where you mentioned that the secondary is as good as it's been in some time, um, that comes with depth. And last year the Buckeyes were depleted in the
Mhm.
secondary, and it showed bad. And there were guys that were getting playing time that weren't ready for it, that were maybe not up to the task. And continuity on the coaching staff helps too. And I think that can't be understated for this bunch, is especially so. Um,
Yeah.
they've done a really good job with preparation, and I think the question of, is Jim Knowles the guy for the job, uh, is, I think that can be put to bed. We've got some important games coming up that will
Mhm.
be the judge of that. But I think as it stands right now, the preparation from the defense, just the way they communicate on the field, the way that they can correct themselves on the
Mhm.
field as far as positioning goes, and getting guys to where they're supposed to be. And I think what was more encouraging out of last week, other than the obvious, what we saw performance wise, was the fact that they were able to do that without the leader of the defense,
Mhm.
and Tommy Eichenberg out there, which, Cody Simon came out and played a phenomenal game in his place. And again, you would like to see just a little bit more out of Steel Chambers, but again, he had a fine game. He had 3
Mhm.
tackles, so not much to complain about there. But I mean, like I said, it seems like there's a lot more trust in not only the coaches to the players, but the players to the players. And I think when you have a team that prepares the way Ohio State does, that is playing at the level that the defense is, all those things are showing.
Mhm.
And um, again, I think depth is huge, coaching is huge, and Ohio State's defense is back. The Bullets are back. BIA is back, and it's good to see that play out on the field the way it has.
Yeah, and to your point about the coaching continuity, I was trying to think there. How many secondary coaches, cornerbacks coaches, safeties coaches have we had at Ohio State in the last 5 years.
A
Would
lot.
venture to guess that I don't think that there were two coaches that coached both safeties and corners there in the last 5 years, 2 years consecutively, except for Tim Walton and Perry Eliano in these last 2 years.
I can't
So
think of anybody.
exactly, and that actually even goes the back to the Urban Meyer days
Mhm.
with hires like Taver Johnson,
Mhm.
or was that Ryan that hired him? No, that was Urban that hired him.
I believe it was.
Um, and not to say that Taver Johnson was not a good coach. I thought he was decent, but it lasted a season and that was it. So it just goes to show that there's not been a lot of continuity. I think with the continuity, you're seeing guys who've played together now for 2 years. A lot of these guys, because this is a more experienced defense,
Mhm.
um, under the same coaches, so they're hearing the same. The guys have heard the same message from the team for the last 2 or from the coaches from the last 2 years. They've also been instructed and taught the same way for the last 2 years,
Yep.
and they've consistently played with the same guys for the last 2 years. Of course, that's going to turn into results. And that's not to say that what Jim Knowles and his staff has done is not good, because I think it's been fantastic. I think that it more speaks to, I think that there needs to be more continuity within a program like this. You need to have a guy like Larry Johnson, who I don't think Larry Johnson really cares to go anywhere else. I think he's going to retire at Ohio State. He just wants to coach defensive linemen. That's been the strongest unit for since I can remember, because of him.
Yeah. And by the
When
way, if any Ohio State fan has this notion that Larry needs to go, that should be kicked to the curb as well. Ohio State, Ryan Day, um, they should all give him an open invitation to stay as long as he would like. That dude knows how to recruit. He does things the right way. He knows how to develop. He's made that all very, very, very apparent. The development with JT and Jack has, in some people's opinions, been a little slower than they would like to see. But I think the fact of the matter is we were spoiled for a long time with the
Mhm.
Bosas and Chase Young, and that doesn't happen. That's not normal. It just isn't.
No.
And for Ohio State to have that for the better part of 6 years
Mhm.
was unbelievably lucky and fortunate to have three guys who, by the way, are all uh, otherworldly talents and are doing what they did at Ohio State on the
Mhm.
same level in the NFL. So we really need to sit back and think about just how good those three were. And you were starting to see, JT and Jack both
Mhm.
playing much, much better consistently as we move on this season. So yeah, in my opinion, LJ can stay as long as he wants.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point about what the Bosas and Young are doing in the NFL, good night.
It's
San
unbelievable.
Francisco has both of them, Nick
Yep.
Bosa and Chase Young. Like,
Yep.
that's some Madden type stuff right there.
Yep.
And I know that Chase kind of had a rough go of it in Washington. I'm glad he's out of there.
Hmm.
Injuries aside, I think he's still Chase Young. So of course you go out and get him if you're San Francisco. The unfortunate part is he's probably going to be really expensive after this season, and I don't know if they can keep him. But
Yeah.
man, I that's scary. I just saw that Nick Bosa was named Defensive Player of the Week this week, um, and had 1.5 sacks, 6 pressures, played a really good game. How much of that do you think was impacted by Chase Young being on the other side and
A
those two
lot.
going after it?
A lot. And I think they met in the backfield, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know how many sacks Chase Young had. I don't know if he had assisted on both. But he and Nick were in the backfield together a lot, and I know they combined for at least one sack together. So I mean, it's almost a cheat code
Mhm.
for them to even be on the same line in the NFL once again. And you can tell. I mean, they showed them several times, and they hammered it home that they were Ohio State teammates on the broadcast. I watched much of that game, and you could just tell that not only is Chase Young feeling himself again after coming off of those injuries,
Mhm.
but to see them together on the sideline again, and I think they were sitting next to each other, and Chase kind of hit his head on Nick's shoulder pads, and it was just something you love to see at Ohio State. And it's as a fan, it's something that you can be proud of, to have guys like
Mhm.
that. And there's not a lot of programs, Georgia, Alabama, and Ohio State really are the three that you can look at, that you look across any NFL roster, and those three schools are going to be represented the most out of any school in the country. So it's a, like I said, it's a blessing to be able to say that those guys all played at Ohio State. And like I
Mhm.
said, there's only really three programs that can claim success like that in the NFL across the board.
Yeah, he had 4 total pressures, 1 sack, and a QB hit. So he,
Yeah.
he had a really good game. That was Chase Young, by the way.
Yeah. And I think if I'm not mistaken, I think both of his the sack there, that one total sack, were 2 half sacks. And I think they were both
Mhm.
with Nick Bosa, if I'm not mistaken. So pretty cool stuff there.
That would not surprise me.
Yeah.
Those dudes are gonna wreak havoc for at least the rest of this season. 7 more
Agreed.
weeks, and in the regular season, and who knows where they can go in the playoffs. But back to Ohio State football,
Mhm.
I'm really impressed with the way and how consistent the defense has played.
Mhm.
I really think that this is probably one of the better teams that Ryan Day has had. Maybe not as complete on offense or powerful, but I think that this is a really good team, and we're in for a treat here coming up in the next 2 weeks. And hopefully playing for championships in December and January. Um, that's always the goal here. And on another note, we're doing it without cheating. Um, while other schools out there continue to celebrate their cheating, and it's kind of a tough thing to see how it is with a bunch of delusional fans um, as far as Michigan goes. What's your update here for us in the happenings in the last week on this up north report?
I first would like to mention something, and it's something that I think, if you're not a Michigan football fan, uh, everybody will agree with this sentiment. When you look at who the most respected um, broadcasters in the game right now are, one of the first names that you will hear out of just about anybody's mouth in regards to college football and now NFL football is Kirk Herbstreit. And I would like to take a second to commend Kirk for the way that he's gone about all of this. Um, he's been nothing but fair, first and foremost, in his analysis of everything that's happened and everything that's going on. And he is somebody who does not just beat the Ohio State drum out of blind bias.
Hmm.
And I think that is one of the things that in today's day and age, and this spans completely beyond football at this point. Now this has turned into an issue of right and wrong, uh,
Hmm.
morality, and things like that. Um, Kirk has always been fair, so much so to the point that he was driven out of Columbus by the delusional side of the Ohio State fan
Hmm.
base that felt like he turned his back on Ohio State. And that is a completely different story. But he has never broken away from doing his job the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And he does so with grace, he does so with humility, and he
Mm-hmm.
does so with the understanding that he is in the public eye and that anything he says is going to be picked apart.
Yeah.
The more upsetting part of all of this is guys like Taylor Lewan, guys like Charles Woodson, and now, and by the way, Charles Woodson is a guy who our grandfather is a big Packers fan.
Mm-hmm.
So, through those connections, I have watched a lot of Packers football.
Yeah.
And Charles Woodson was a guy who, first and foremost, a phenomenal football player and
Yeah.
somebody who I respected. Um, that is not so much the case anymore. And with the next name that I'm going to bring up, I want to say this very, very, very poignantly clear. Desmond Howard has no place in college football. He has no place in front of a TV camera being broadcast to millions of viewers across the country. He has no place giving any sort of insight on anything that involves college football, in my opinion, and anything Michigan related, because he has no ability to take his corn and blue colored glasses off to look at the facts, see what's been presented, and give an unbiased opinion on any of this. Stephen A. Smith sat on First Take 2 days ago and basically said there is no room to play victim here for Michigan.
No.
None at all. And gave what I thought was a very thoughtful, very well put together thought about Michigan's place in college football right now. And I don't think it's outside of the possibility that Michigan should be even considered for the college football playoff.
Mm-hmm.
Because the longer this goes on, the uglier it gets for Michigan. And the gaslighting, the deflecting
Mm-hmm.
that's done by Desmond Howard on national television on every ESPN program that he has put on over the last 2 weeks has been disgusting. It's irresponsible, and it's unthinkable.
Mm-hmm.
It's unfathomable. The way that he is laughing in the face of anybody that opposes Michigan. He is pompously just ungodly arrogant in the way that he's going about all of this. He clearly has not read Tony Petitti's report that he sent
Mm-hmm.
to Michigan outlining every bit of anything that would clear up any question that Desmond Howard has on any of this.
But I got to
It's
push
some of the
back on
most
that one real quick.
okay.
So, just based upon the reports that are coming out now, there was a FOIA request done, and the AP is reporting that there was no connection, and that Connor Stallions had to anything because he didn't pay or he didn't expense any of the ticket or travel costs. Now, that was what's being reported. To look at it from the objective lens would be to say, if you were cheating or doing something nefarious, what is always the first way criminals get caught? You follow the money, right? So why would Connor Stallions pay for this stuff through university channels? But continue. Just wanted to bring that in there and make sure that we have the most up-to-date information in there.
Other than that, the report states that Michigan is found out. Point blank, period. Michigan's been found out.
Mm-hmm.
Desmond Howard has sat on ESPN's programs for 2 weeks and has been absolutely irresponsible in the way that he is just openly mocking this process, mocking college football, mocking Ohio State, saying that, this is all because Michigan has won the last 2 years. Okay. You can have the last 2 years. I mean, it's what's happened has happened. And the part that he fails to realize and fails to acknowledge, and I think we've mentioned this before, is that if this was against Ohio State, if the shoe was on the other foot and this was against Ohio State, he would be absolutely unhinged in calling for every single job that he, and there would be no due process.
Mm-hmm.
There would be no, let's wait until the facts come out and let's, the fact of the matter is, if there wasn't enough to put Michigan away, the NCAA wouldn't have come forward to the Big Ten, and the Big Ten wouldn't have come forward to Michigan at this moment. And likely we wouldn't have heard about it until after the season was over. But again, they can't think past the fact that the heat is on. You have a head coach that is clearly not interested in playing by the rules. He's made that apparent throughout his time at Michigan. This is not the first rules infraction that has been imposed against Michigan. This is not the first suspension that Harbaugh has gotten. And another point that I would like to make here is the report that came out that Michigan and their Board of Regents has explored the idea of leaving the Big Ten. There is no scenario, not one. And I can't understand how Michigan fans have come to this conclusion that they are the top brand in the Big Ten, the top brand in college football. Somehow, some way, they've gotten on this.
I have a few follow-ups to Michigan being the top brand in college football. Mm-hmm. How many national championships have they won since the 1900s?
Well, since World War II.
Yes,
I think the answer would be maybe 1.5. The last one that they have is shared, by the way.
Correct, and was in 1997.
Correct.
So how many college football playoff wins do they have?
0.
What about BCS bowls? They weren't very good in BCS bowls either.
Maybe not 0, but I think they won an Orange Bowl or something like that. But my point in all of this is, and I know you're getting at the same thing, for a team that has a half of a national championship in 26 years, for a team who has largely, and Paul Feinbaum and Matthew Berry did a very good job of outlining a lot of this stuff too. They're sitting on 999 wins career for Michigan as a program. Much of that came before 1980. So in the modern era of college football, Michigan has been largely irrelevant. And I don't think that that's up for debate. They were average with Lloyd Carr. They were dog shit with Brady Hoke. They were even worse with Rich Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm.
They have not been a national threat of any significance in a very, very long time. They got beat up and down the field by Ohio State for the better part of 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow now, just because they've won 2 Big Ten championships in a row that may or may not be legit, now they think that they are the prominent program and the prominent brand in the Big Ten that's just going to walk away, and they think that they're going to, just waltz into the SEC or the ACC, and what world are we living in, Michigan fans? And what world are we living in, Desmond Howard? It's
So
it's disgusting, the level of gaslighting and deflection and stupidity, frankly,
mhm.
that they are showing as a fan base, as a program, as an institution, with their president even getting in on the fun. This Michigan against the world notion, Michigan against everybody, Michigan against whatever, is absolutely just asinine. And it is to the point now where this whole victim thing and Sharon Moore crying like a baby after the game, and I mean, let's talk about how cringy, weird, and just outright absurd that was. I mean, I get it, it's an emotional game, but as other people have made very apparent, Jim Harbaugh gave a presser on Monday, and the dude's not dead. He's still very much alive.
I
That
did
was
this for you, Coach.
it was strange for a team who is supposed to be, the best team in the last 100 years. So, you only put up 24 points and didn't throw the ball in the second half. But yeah, you're, crying after the game, and 3 weeks ago,
Threw
that
for
win that
60 yards.
yeah, that win against Penn State for Ohio State wasn't a quality win 3 weeks ago, but now this is the best win in the country for the best team in the country. I think not, and I think that this victim, whatever that they're trying to play, is played out. It's downright irresponsible for ESPN to let these guys get on TV and say the things that they're saying. It's it's unbelievable, and it's to the point where I don't have words for it anymore other than what I just said.
Mhm.
And I can only hope for a big Ohio State win next weekend in Ann Arbor. And I mean, this is unlike anything I've ever seen before. They absolutely drug Ohio State over the coals for tattoos.
They did.
And
They
to
did.
see the things that they said. And by the way, Desmond Howard said it is always good to see somebody who breaks the rules and doesn't play fair out of the game, in reference to Jim Tressel. So Des, you probably won't see this, and that's fine. I'm just an Ohio State fan who a lot of people are going to say is biased and pissed off at the world and whatever the case is. But I want to ask you a question, Des. If you thought that about Jim Tressel, who, you know, broke the rules, and that's fine. Ohio State
Mhm.
fans have lived with that. They got absolutely hammered by the NCAA in sanctions because of those transgressions. If you think that it's good that Jim Tressel was dispatched from college football for doing the things that he did, by the way, Jim Harbaugh already lied to the NCAA earlier this season, which is a level 1 infraction in terms of NCAA violations and is a fireable offense by most respectable programs. Um, if you think that about Jim Tressel, how do you, with a straight face, get on TV and basically prop up Jim Harbaugh as some kind of deity? Do you think that there's no moral standing that Jim Harbaugh should stand on? Do you think there's no repercussions for the program that he's running? And would you, if this investigation plays out the way that you want it to, will you be willing to look everybody in the face and look into a camera the same way that I am and admit that you were wrong and admit that Michigan was wrong? I don't think so.
I don't think he will. I think that there's a few things here that you've kind of described. I feel like with Desmond, you kind of described what the dichotomy of a guilty human being sounds like, where everything you do is to accuse someone else, and then when you are backed up into that position, you fight like hell to get out of it. Um, Does that excuse his behavior? Absolutely not. But I do think that, I think that there's a lot of things that people will do for fandom. And they're fanatics for a reason. And I think that Desmond Howard is not only a broadcaster, but he is a fanatic for the school that he went to and won a Heisman Trophy at. And by the way, this is me by no means defending him.
Mhm.
Um, I think that it's more understanding or explaining why he is acting the way that he is. He's a fan, man. And I can't say that I wouldn't do the same thing. I would hope that I wouldn't in a situation like this. Typically, I like to sit back and let the feathers fly and then see where the dust settles. But I'm also an Ohio State fan. I didn't go out and gloat about um, or try to deflect from the tattoos. Man, these guys went out and they won those gold pants and bull rings because they worked their ass off and traded it for a tattoo. What really is so bad about that? Not really much. Um, so it's they weren't cheating the game. They were going out and using the trinkets that they got for winning those games because they worked their ass off and had games vacated, lost. I don't think they lost any scholarships, but had a bowl ban, which they should have just self-imposed a bowl ban and not gone to that Gator Bowl when Luke Fickell was the coach. But that's neither here nor there. So I think really at this juncture, you're going to continue to see those guys absolutely gaslight because I think about it this way. The media today in general, fueled by social media, is out for dramatic reactions and anything to drive clicks. What does Desmond Howard do best to drive those clicks? He yells and screams about Michigan. That's why Disney keeps him going at ESPN, because he's driving those clicks as much of an idiot as he truly is. But doesn't excuse any of that behavior. Actually, I think it makes it worse.
Mhm.
It really says that, you're kind of selling out to for what? To pump up your school that you went to in the 90s and won a Heisman Trophy one year because you had a really good year kick returning and as a wide receiver. And then, yeah, I don't know. I think that the gaslighting is kind of what the biggest problem I have with it is. We've seen this now for probably the last 10 years. Anything big, you have all these people out there trying to gaslight you and tell you that it's either not what it is or that it is some massive conspiracy. 95% of the time it's somewhere in the middle. I like to think sometimes that it is those massive conspiracies because it's fun.
Mhm.
But I'm not going to go out there and be a boisterous loudmouth about it. No, you just sit back and enjoy the ride at times. And I think that Michigan fans should probably start doing that, because enjoying that ride might not last much longer. I I think that the only way that they get out of this is if there is truly no evidence of any impropriety. But I don't think it would have gotten this far if there was no evidence. The NCAA releasing it or it getting leaked, that was on purpose. It's not, it was not to that it was a calculated play by somebody, either within the Michigan camp or within the NCAA or whomever you want to say is opposing Michigan at this point. But I think that there was a reason that it was all released. Here I go sounding like one of those conspiracy nuts, but I think that there probably was a reason that this was released, and it's because there's something going on here. To the extent of what that is, we're yet to see the hard facts. But I don't think that you should go out there trying to gaslight folks and say, hey, I'm not, I'm not denying that it happened, and I'm not confirming that it happened, is probably the better take. And to say, to maybe tone it down and say, hey, I love Michigan, which please don't clip that. But I don't think they would do something like that, is much different than, nah, they didn't do that. Y'all fools did that. And you're snitching on us. Because that's what we're hearing. And that's the problem. It's been proven now, I don't know, 4 or 5 times. Ohio State had nothing to do with this. Ryan Day had nothing to do with this. Now keep his name out your mouth.
And I think another thing too, that again, this is now Jim Harbaugh's 3rd rules infraction since he's been at the University of Michigan.
Hey man, hamburgers.
And the extra practices and
pocket glizzies.
Yeah, it's just I think in
How
this
many
investigation now into this alleged gambling situation too, there's a lot that I think there's a lot going on, and I think it goes a lot deeper than just the sign stealing stuff. On the surface, it does not appear that the culture at Michigan is a very healthy one. And I think that to me stands out more than anything. And that to me trumps what a lot of these Michigan fans are thinking. And, oh, it's just sign stealing. Everybody does it. No, they don't. And not to this level. And
no, they do it. They do it. They do it in a game.
But this is
if
not,
they're going to.
But what I'm referring to when I say sign stealing is to what Michigan is accused of doing and what the evidence points to that they have done.
You're talking about the advanced scouting,
correct?
Filming,
correct?
Got it. Okay.
Not everybody does that.
No,
that is not an everybody does this thing.
No.
And to deflect and gaslight and to make that the narrative that everybody does do it and that Ohio State's just mad because Michigan's won the last 2 years is absurd.
Mm-hmm.
And the last point that I would like to make here in regards to, all of this stuff is that, and I'm going to piggyback off of what Paul Feinbaum said the other day on the Matthew Berry pod, is that Michigan is not the brand or program or powerhouse that they think they are. They have not won anything of significance past the Big Ten championship in the last 26 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now I get it. This newfound success that you guys have stumbled upon might be a little hard to deal with, but I think it's time for a reality check. And I'm afraid that it's going to get dealt in a manner that not many Michigan fans are going to enjoy.
Yeah. So, what do you think the potential ramifications are for this? Is it a bowl ban for a couple of years? Do you think that they're just going to dismantle the program? I mean, I don't think they're going to dismantle the program.
Well, but no, I don't think they're going to dismantle the program. However, I think the program as it sits right now will not be what it looks like next year. Let's put it that way. I don't think Jim Harbaugh will return. I don't think he will be allowed to return. I do think a show cause penalty will be in order. I do think that there will be a lack of institutional control that's found. I do think that they could be looking at vacated wins, and I think that will span beyond just a single season of vacated wins. And I think that's probably what it'll look like. I think there could be a bowl ban involved. And I just it's hard for me to think about that happening any other way unless, like you said, there is damning evidence that points in the opposite direction of the damning evidence that is already out there now.
That's a lot of damning.
It's a whole lot of damning.
Do we have some beavers there or what?
Well, we'll see.
I mean, I'm just trying to figure out like who's doing all this damming, or are we making it like Hoover Dam?
It could be. It could be the Ann Arbor Dam. It could be the Ann Arbor Dam, and the Ann Arbor Dam could very well be getting ready to burst. So we'll see. Yeah.
Sorry, there was a lot of seriousness there that I just couldn't take it anymore. I needed to
that's fair.
Kind of break the tension here.
Yeah, I mean that's a lot that personally has been sitting on my mind.
I know.
And to listen to Desmond Howard every day spew all that garbage, and it's unbelievable the lengths that they're going to deflect and all of these Taylor Lewans and Dave Portnoy's that are saying that everybody's just scared of the big bad beast Michigan is, and we don't need to throw the ball in the second half, Dave Portnoy says, and whatever. But I mean, the only thing left is to have stuff play out on the field, and we're heading that way. And Ohio State is on the way to that game, as is Michigan. A lot can develop in between now and then. There's a hearing set for Friday to determine if Jim Harbaugh will be allowed on the field for the remainder of the season. So we'll keep tabs on that, as will the national college football audience. But the overarching story here is Ohio State, a 38-3 winner against Big Brother in Michigan State. It's, most complete performance of the season to date for Ohio State, I think, on offense, both sides of the ball, even maybe. Ohio State is, trying to figure out health on offense. They've figured out health on offense for the most part, trying to figure out health on defense, and put together the end of the season that all of us Buckeye fans would like to see, and that's playing for championships, as Ohio State usually does. Vince, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Yeah, you better get your boats ready to start rowing up and down that field this week. PJ Fleck is coming to town.
Rumor has it that the boat has already been seen going up and down the Scioto River, but we'll see if it can find its way to Ohio Stadium on Saturday. We will see you guys next week. This has been another episode of High Street Sports. Guys, before we get out of here, we are inching closer and closer to 100 subs on the channel. That is huge. Thank you guys each week for coming back to hang out with us knuckleheads and talk Ohio State football and on the national show on Wednesdays. It means the world to us that you guys are here. We love having you guys here. Like, comment, subscribe. As always, share the pod with a friend that hasn't seen it yet. And always comment, ask us questions. We would love to open up the floor to you guys and interact with you guys more and more. There have been some more comments lately, so we appreciate you guys for that. But as always, thank you guys. For Vince, I'm Chris. This has been High Street Sports. We'll see you guys next time.